But remarkably, it's only led to a reduction of about 20% in global emissions. Why is that? The way that we're eating hasn't really changed. We're still eating the same meals with roughly the same content. We are using less energy to heat our buildings and run the appliances within them at work, but in homes we're doing more of it, so that's evened out. The big factories that make our big materials, steel and cement, are still running because it's so difficult to shut them down. And what's really changed is our travel. So when you add that up, it gets to about a 20% reduction. Let's turn that on its head and ask, what would it be like if we actually lived with zero emissions? Well, we would have less beef, we would stop eating beef, lamb and dairy. We'd change our heaters from gas boilers to electric heat pumps and insulate the buildings better. We'd make materials in a different way and use them much more carefully. We'd conserve their value for longer. And we'd travel differently. We wouldn't fly, but we would be able to use electric cars, so we'd be able to move around much more freely. When we reach zero emissions, which we have to, we're going to make changes in our life without any question. But unlike lockdown, we're not going to have to give up the things that we most value.
That's also when you got the 1.5 million people who are going to die. That's crazy.
The global health emergency has shown us what a truly borderless crisis looks like. And of course, we did not fully see COVID coming. Yet climate change and biodiversity loss represent a borderless crisis, the solutions to which have been argued about and postponed for far too long. The fight against this terrible pandemic provides, if ever one was needed, a crystal clear example of the scale and sheer speed at which the global community can tackle crises when we combine political will with business ingenuity and public mobilization.
A little more here in the U.S., though.
Because we don't need to do that. What we need them to do is, with the oil that's out there, we need them to refine that oil so that prices, so that the capacity could go up, and then prices would go down, inherently go down.
And so, I know the president once said that he was going to end fossil fuel. Is that now off the table?
No, we are going to continue to move forward with our clean energy proposal, our climate change proposal.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
These vaccines are highly, highly effective.
Vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
They're really, really good against variants.
Right? Instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person, potentially mutating and becoming more virulent and drug resistant along the way, now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else. It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people. That means the vaccines will get us to the end of this if we just go fast enough to get the whole population.
Everyone who takes the vaccine is not just protecting themselves, but reducing their transmission to other people and allowing society to get back to normal.
Get your first shot, and when you're due for your second, get your second shot.
A key goal is to stop the transmission, to get the immunity levels up so that you get almost no infection going on whatsoever.
When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
If you are fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask. If you're vaccinated, you're not going to be hospitalized, you're not going to be in an ICU unit, and you're not going to die. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Always help me start.
Well, it's either that or you're going to hear me breathe, and I don't think anybody wants to hear that. Anyway, welcome to News from the Pew, your source of news from around the interweb, and then we bring it to you in a format that is digestible and not so terrifying. I am your host, Rick Barrett, and I am joined by my wonderful panel, including Steve Cunningham from Sensei Spadilius. We have Mr. Jonathan Arrington hanging out with us from Florida, and we have world-famous hip-hop artist Fawaz Yazi. I'm not even kidding. I love the guy. But also, coming up in about a month, he is going to be having the first ever hip-hop battle between himself and a Protestant rapper. So we have that coming up. So that's why we are absolutely so happy to have all of you guys here. And I would say
Tupac's birthday today.
And what?
Yeah, it's Tupac's birthday.
Yes, that's right. One for my homies. So so pour one out for him if you're down for that kind of cause. Ryan will not be joining us because Ryan is taking care of housing things. So keep him in his prayers, because if you've ever bought, sold, or lived in a house, you understand how annoying any of that process is. So we will move on from that. We're going to keep it. It's going to be a bit of an abridged show because some of our panelists are going to be heading off to Mass. It is the Feast of Corpus Christi. Happy Feast of Corpus Christi to you all who are watching. So we got three topics for you today. We're going to be talking a political, a cultural, and a Catholic topic. Our political topic will be the fact that they haven't said it, but if you look at the numbers, we are in a recession. Our cultural topic, which probably will be the most explosive, is Cracker Barrel goes gay. And finally, we'll talk about the ever-expanding list of pregnancy centers that are being firebombed or vandalized in the lead-up to the Roe decision that is supposed to drop. It was supposed to drop Monday, then Wednesday. Now, nobody knows as the violence increases towards people in the pro-life sphere, dealing with different groups that are absolutely funded by those who are diabolical in their intent to come after us. So let's get right into it. Our first story will come to us from PJ Media, and the headline says simply, "We're in a recession." And the idea, technically entering a recession. We've known for a while that this is going to be the end result of shutting off the supply chain, shutting down the country, pumping about $6 trillion of fake money into the economy. And having these disastrous policies put in by the Biden regime in Washington, D.C. But from zerohedge.com, they said the Atlanta Fed's second quarter GDP tracker is 0.0, which effectively means technically we are in a recession. Now, that doesn't mean they'll say anything for a while because, this will be the last point I make before I throw it to the panel. The longer they can keep from saying we're in an actual recession, the longer they delay the actual panic that will come from businesses responding and people responding to it. Right now, everybody's kind of hanging on by a thread, and this might be the push that a lot of people are anticipating is not going to be great. So we'll go Steve, John, and then Fawaz. Steve, your reaction to the news that technically we are in a recession.
Let me start with putting Peter on. Peter Schiff, I was telling you about.
And it has put us in a place where we can actually put us in a place where the American people feel we can take on inflation. What I mean by that is we've seen growth, right, with as I mentioned, more than 8 million jobs, and now we're transitioning into a stable growth.
The White House's new way of softening that inflationary blow, you just heard it, is by rebranding it as our transitioning to stable growth. Okay, 8.6% inflation. But according to the chief investment strategist at Charles Schwab, the measure of consumer...
It's really like 16% inflation, if you want to ask.
Yeah, she brings that up, I think.
Electricity.
Or he does.
Surged by 25.7% year over year. So that puts the marker just slightly less than the peak it was in 1980. But our next guest fears we're in store for even worse in the days and weeks to come. Joining us now is Peter Schiff, chief economist and global strategist for Euro Pacific Capital and host of Schiff Radio. Peter, thanks so much for being here. I was watching your tweets and Tom Elliott over the weekend discussing why the inflation number is so misleading. Explain it to us in simple terms.
Well, first of all, the government reporting on prices. Inflation is the expansion of the money supply. That's the actual definition. And it often results in prices going up. But the way the government measures prices today, it really understates the true impact. If we were still measuring prices using the CPI that we were using back in the 1970s, the actual increase would be about double what the government is reporting. So not 8.6, it'd be closer to 17%, maybe a little bit more.
Well, Peter, when you think about the average cost of housing for individuals who rent, that figure alone was a staggering series of increases over the last, several months, in the last, really several years. How significant is that given the modest increases in salary for individuals who are working?
Well, it's very significant. And, shelter is about a third of the official CPI, but the government doesn't use actual home prices, which are up about 20%, or actual rents that were up over 15%. They use something that they made up called owner's equivalent rent. And that's something that nobody actually pays, but that was only up 5.5%.
And Peter, we also hear now that to address the oil price issue, the energy price issue, the Senate Finance Committee Chair Ron Wyden is introducing what you and I remember as the windfall profits tax, called something else. It's a 21% surtax on oil company profits that they consider, I'm laughing because it's so painful, that they consider excessive. What's that going to do? They cause the price of oil to go up.
Well, look, if we confiscated all the profits and distributed it to the American public, you would barely even notice the difference. But if you take the profits out of drilling for oil, guess what? No one's going to drill for oil. So we're going to have an even bigger supply problem than we have right now. But the real problem is demand. You just mentioned that American Rescue Plan. That was a disaster. We need to be rescued from that plan, because what the government did was the complete opposite of what they should have done. As they were ordering everybody to stop working and we shut down the economy and we stopped producing, we printed more money. So we gave out all this money to people. We paid a lot of people more money not to work than when they actually had a job and they earned money, except when they were staying at home, they weren't being productive. And so we flooded the economy with money as we were starving it of goods. And of course, prices went through the roof. I predicted that this was going to happen back in March of 2020 when we first went down this road. But then Biden really kicked it into a whole new gear. And now we're dealing with the consequences of that policy, that reckless monetary and fiscal policy.
Now, with 0.75 increase in the interest rate, that's not going to do much, is it, Peter?
No, I mean, if the Fed is so far behind the curve, it can't even see it. You know, we actually have to get interest rates above the rate of inflation. We need positive real interest rates. But thanks to the Federal Reserve, everybody has so much debt that we can't afford to pay an interest rate high enough to fight inflation. But it is going to be high enough to cause a massive recession and another financial crisis that's worse than the one we had in 2008.
Well, that doesn't keep people.
I love how they have all the buttons over everyone's face. You can't see what's going on. Anyway, no, but this is the Great Reset being played in real time. If you've studied anything that we've talked about, or especially I've been going over for the last year and a half, 2 years, read any of those books, look at their websites, look at their videos or podcasts, read their blogs. This is what they're being called for. That lead-in video I played where it talked about the absolute zero. That's a real PDF. I have it. I've used it many times. And it said on there, no fossil fuel, no ICE cars, no this, no that. This is, you see that like Biden's coming out, you know, getting rid of the oil. What was his first things he did? He cut off the pipelines that were being produced, cut those off. They put what, 45 billion in emergency fund in that's not going to do anything. I think we used 20 billion a day. So it basically was 2 days worth. They did nothing to the prices. All it did was get rid of some of the reserves. So eventually he keeps getting those reserves for a rainy day fund. You're not going to have any of those things, which is right up to their plan. But lucky for us, the oil companies are in on it too. If you watch like corporate reports, how and why big oil took over the world, you'll see it in part 2. It goes into how the big oil guys are literally, it's basically like a deal. Hey, we're going to give you a ton of money, and then we're going to vilify you on TV. But don't worry, we're just going to keep funding money to you and make you look bad, but you're going to get a ton on the back end for going green. And these guys, they're actually going in there, cutting that, looking like they're doing what you want them to do. But on the other side, just like if you look at the Great Reset intro video, the CEO of BP sits there and says exactly what Biden said during the debate with Trump when Trump went, oh, that's big news. You're going to lose Texas, Pennsylvania. Nope. That's what the CEO of BP said 4 months prior, verbatim. They're all in on it. We're going to get hosed in the end. But yeah, you're seeing this played out in real time. The one link that I showed here, mortgage rates surge well into the 6% range after one of the worst days in decades. That's just one of the things. Here's that you already put the U.S. economy technically enters a recession. Here's one from, it's not U.S., but in China, depositors left in dark as 3 local banks freeze deposits. Oh, I don't have the screen on. I'm sorry. Chinese depositors.
We're just looking at your beautiful face, buddy.
I know. I'm sorry, man. Excuse me out there. It's torturous. So they went to protest, okay, and they have to use these apps in green or red, and all of them the health ones went red. They froze their deposits, froze the bank, and they had to go home. This is coming to a dictatorship near you, rated R.
Yeah, it is. John, so we're looking at people who fled cities to Texas, Florida, other places, paying well above the average for their homes. Now they're technically underwater on those, so mortgage rates are going up on top of food, and food shortages are here. I know people keep talking about food shortages in the future tense, like, oh, when the coming food shortages happen, go to a market right now, go to a supermarket right now. There's the shelves are not stocked. They aren't stocked in any way, shape, or form. And now you have the trickling out of the idea, like, hey, man, there's a recession. But when you ask Biden, when you ask his press secretary, when you ask anybody involved, they're like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Yet they've been telling us it was like
Under
that.
my plan for the economy, we made extraordinary progress. And we put America in a position to tackle a worldwide problem is worse everywhere but here, inflation.
Right. Yeah, we're doing great. We're doing great here. Isn't that right, John?
Yeah. I think there's actually a philosophical debate going on right now. A lot of people probably don't know about it. It's largely in First Things and a few other periodical Catholic, spots for intellectual debate and stuff. But it's about basically political philosophy, and it really has a lot to do with what's going on right now, and what's even being discussed by folks like Peter Schiff and a few others who are on like this Patrick Gentempo's Money 2022, the guy who's done a lot of good stuff about the vaxes and the and finances in general, even over the last few years. But it's about the attack on the middle class, and there's a lot that can be said about that, and a lot that is said all the time. But to kind of get to the root of it from a Catholic perspective, it's that the current government and the push of the worldwide governments is to crush the middle class because they are a sort of bulwark against what they want, and that is to break us down. It may seem counterintuitive at first, but to break us down into just a bunch of individuals competing for little bits off the pie. Because we're sinking financially. We're going under. So hey, they're going to give me a check for $600. Just because it's a recession or whatever. Great. Little do I think about or reflect on what I'm going to end up owing back to the government because of the inflation that this $600 for everybody's going to end up causing. Like, did that $600 end up benefiting me financially, or was it part of a greater scheme that actually harmed me very badly financially? I mean, I'll admit, like I wasn't thinking this at first when you get these few $1,000s because you have kids and get a little bit more. But then you start to reflect on it, and then it comes time to file your taxes, and these things catch up with you. But just to let kind of the general public know that there's a philosophical debate about this attack on the middle class because, again, and the folks at the Money 2022 series that Peter Schiff's taking part in, they let you know how the different government regulations are actually very beneficial for big business and those that have corporations of 500 plus employees, whereas those that employ 10 to 500 people are sinking financially. And you think about it, like 10 to 500 people, about a normal sized business that could still remain local. Even like a local grocery store or a local sort of supermarket that would not be part of a huge chain. And so what they're doing is they're actually breaking us down into these individuals, but individual in a sense that we're disconnected from the common good that's actually going to help our society thrive. And that's going to help them actually benefit the big corporations. So similar to what Steve was saying, but just to let you know, there's a Catholic philosophical discussion about all this going on right now as well that sees all this from the perspective of subsidiarity, the thing that Pius XI brought up so well in his encyclical Quadragesimo Milano. So just a little tidbit there.
No, it's interesting because I think these things need to be discussed and they should be discussed because we've just been in a continual reactionary cycle from 2020. But Fawaz, we have people. I mean, you could see it coming. You got out of California. You went to a place where you could become more sustainable on your own. And that, unfortunately, if people didn't get into that beforehand, I mean, I always say it's never too late until it's too late. But at this point, even if you just do sell your home, you're going to be buying a home that's going to be underwater as well. And how do you pay for that? And how do you take care of your family? And the reaction, I think, from your normies, for lack of a better term, when this actually is announced that we're in a recession and that the interest rates have to go up and that people have to tighten their belts even more than they're doing now, it's not a recipe for success.
No, it's not. You're absolutely right. And Peter Schiff, so sometimes can be wrong. Is actually right because you could see this coming from a mile away. I agree with Steve and of course with Jonathan. If you look at every sector of the economy, we're pretty much upside down in almost everything. You have record inflation, which Peter Schiff is right. It's not 8% because they're going off the model. They're going off of the new model. If you measure it from the old model, which measured accurately, we haven't seen this type of inflation since like the 1940s, not the 80s. And the same thing with unemployment. the way they measure unemployment today is not how they measure back in the 50s and 60s. And unemployment is extremely high, not as low as they say. This was coming. A recession happens. It's a cyclical thing. That's what happens when you have a dollar not backed up by anything. There's nothing objectively that's backed up by. It used to be backed up by gold. You had to balance a budget at that time. Now it's just coming out of thin air. It's a monopoly game that we're in. So, like Jonathan said, the middle class gets hurt. Back in the 50s, they created the middle class. The reason they created the middle class is because we had manufacturing here, and they were able to pay a father and a husband a good living wage where he would own a car, send his kids to the college, and own a home. And nowadays, you can't do that because they're trying to globalize everything. Everything's now global. China owns most of our manufacturing. And this is the issue, that they keep kicking the can down further and further, hoping that the next president will just take care of it. But the next president just keeps kicking and kicking because they're all in it. They're all in on it, and we're not part of the elite. So I just went and picked up a half a cow. Cost me $4 a pound for a grass-fed Amish raised. Well, now you can't even get ground beef. More, ground beef right now is about $10 a pound in California, and it's GMO. So I got out at the right time, but the problem was when COVID hit, they shut everything out on purpose. They tested basic universal income on everybody. That was a nice little test. We've been so used to cheap candy by borrowing money out of thin air and just paying low interest rates on it. Now we've got inflation. You have to raise the interest rates up to maybe 15%, like they did back in the 80s, close to 20%, just to keep up with inflation. They're not going to do that. So this recession is going to hit extremely hard. Cash is going to be king once again, because once everything goes down, you can buy stock once again. But it might be one of those things to where when we come out of the recession, we might not have the economic uptick that we did in the past. We came out of a recession. And that might be their plan because they want everyone dependent on them. Corporations, the big corporations, are going to own everything. They're going to supply all the jobs. And those who don't want to work will just be paid a measly little salary to stay at home in a little pod and eat the bugs like we've talked about before. So this, Steve's right. This is their transition. They've been trying to do this for decades. And this is their golden opportunity. The only thing here is, do we have enough spiritual stamina to pray and fast that God can perform a miracle from heaven? Because this is what we need at this point. There's no natural way of fixing this. You just got to survive and stay in a state of grace at the moment. But I don't want to give any financial advice to anybody because I'm not a financial advisor. But gold's looking pretty good right now.
Just don't buy it from Steve Schmidt. Who the whole point of it was to be there. Let me bring this up before we go on to our next topic. I don't know if you guys are seeing it. I just came back from the state of Rhode Island where I went to go visit family. By the way, I'll never fly unless it's for emergency business again. It was an absolute nightmare. But I don't know if you've seen it where you guys live, but I'm seeing more frequently in different parts of the state of Texas, pumps at the gas station being covered up out of gas, restrictions on those. Now, I bring this up because Fawaz is starting. He says stay in a state of grace, which means you want to keep getting access to the sacraments. For somebody like me, and I'm just pointing this for my example, the nearest Latin mass, the mass that I want to attend, is 40 minutes away. It's about 80 miles. So I'm starting to think of the reality that Steve has been talking about for a while, where, hey, man, what you really need to do at this point is find a parish close to you and get there, or find a parish and move to it. Because I don't know if anybody else's experience this. It's getting to a point real soon where they can't afford to deliver the gas. So your small independent gas stations can't afford to buy the gas. And we're going to see a lot more gas stations with their pumps saying out of gas, out of order, whatever the case may be. And just some thoughts on that. I don't know. We'll go Steve, John, and Fawaz again on that.
Yeah, just to piggyback what Jonathan also was saying. I mean, like you said, you got COVID money. Everyone got, checks in the mail for not doing anything. A lot of people. Ukraine money. Every other week, they're giving out billions of dollars. QE infinity for the last decade. So this is just economics 101. This was going to happen. Now it's just going to be, now when they admit it, it's kind of like that bubble with the student loans. When that thing busts, it's going to bring down a lot of things. But yeah, no, again, this is their plan. 2025, they have a link out. All these cars companies like Ford, Toyota, etc., they're not going to make ICE cars. Why? Well, they need gas. But if everyone, their brother, who's part of the World Economic Forum, and that's corporations, your governments, other people like that, are saying no more fossil fuels, as Biden has said repeatedly, we're going to get out when he ran. But don't worry about voting because it doesn't matter anyways on the federal level. But they said that was going to happen. This is not supposed to be shocking to anybody. If you've been seeing what's been going on, their plans and what they've been saying, this is just going right down the blueprint. 2025, no more ICE cars being made, being sold at your car companies. They're not doing that just because, you know what, we think this is a good idea. We're just going to make some more electric cars, boogie, woogie, woogie, woo, and just see if people buy them. No, it's because there's not going to be any gas available. So when I told the guys at the gym, wait till Bubba can't get down here with his truck, can't get any gas. Maybe that'll be the time when people start getting uppity. I saw a tweet the other day. What's it going to take for people to start getting a little upset about what's going on? Now, I'm not talking about armed revolutions or anything like that. Obviously, this thing is breaking it down, decentralize everything. You talk about the French Revolution, centralized all these nations. You got to break everything down, decentralize, get back to the basics. Goes back into even, I remember Dr. Marshall had a photo of Italy's diocese. You saw dioceses all over the place in Italy. Look at the state of South Carolina. There's one for the entire state. Notice they're still 2% Catholic or something like that. Decentralization on all levels, political and religious. And you also got to work at converting everyone. When you talk about what Richard was saying about moving close to our parishes, yes, communities is going to be key. John Senior writes about it in Restoration of Christian Culture. The parish is in the middle, and everyone lives around it. So you got to get closer to one, because if you can't drive the one, what do you think your priest is going to be able to drive the one? He ain't going to get gas either. Or if he has gas, and they bring out like that Chinese system was when they basically shut you off, what do you think? Your car's not going to turn on, because they do have a kill switch coming in these new cars. So you got to start thinking about these nutty things all of a sudden are literally happening. Hopefully it will get so bad that people will start breaking off. Maybe a DeSantis will figure out, you know what, running for DC is either for my pride or let me be king of Florida and really bring in freedom, because nothing's going to happen if you go to DC. He could change a lot of lives. Him, Noam, a lot of people, New Hampshire, they've talked about breaking off. New Hampshire has breaking off, getting out of this, start drilling yourself, start growing your own food. You won't be able to drill yourself in the back, but your state, break off, start drilling your own. If Texas goes, you know what? DC's not going to let me drill. Bye. All right. See, we'll holler and then start drilling your own. What are they going to do? Yeah, no, you can't be doing that. All right. Bring in the 4th Infantry. I'm sure Texas can defend themselves if they try to do that over oil. South Carolina too. Anybody. It's just, how do we get the people that have to make the decisions figure this out? And, I know priests and bishops need to start thinking about this, because there's going to be a time you're not going to have anybody show up because they can't get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. For me, there's a Nova Sordo parish 5 minutes up the road. So if worse comes to worse, I mean, I do have access to it. I know some people may be like, it's not Alabama. I'm not doing that right now. But John,
is right. It's just, worse. I was talking to a monk in the Transalpine Redemptorist in New Zealand about food, and he goes, because I sent them some supplements, and he goes, it's good that we have all this, because they asked for it, but we got to remind ourselves that, heaven doesn't care if you have a good diet, if you have money in the bank, if you can drive your car. It's holiness over the secular stuff. So yeah, we got to fight for it still, but again, black feeling.
I'm absolutely counting on heaven, not counting on my diet. So that's an absolute definite there. I'm hoping that's not held against me. But John, do you notice just the gasoline question, economics wise? I know you're close to a parish, so that's not a huge deal for you. But are you noticing things of that nature? And are there people that travel to your parish that are starting to be concerned about that?
Yeah, and I mean, just because I live close to a parish doesn't, there's usually an issue with the Latin Mass that very, very often, probably much more frequently than is the contrary, you've got a parish in a pretty rough part of town. That's usually how it is for the Fraternity of St. Peter. The Institute of Christ the King has a lot of beautiful parishes, but in St. Louis and Kansas City, it's not in a part of town where you want to live if you were raising a family. Just to give you some examples, the parish by which we live, we're close. We're 3.5 miles. And so, yeah, we took my wife and I both biked, and we had our little contraptions that carried 3 kids behind us or a kid on our back. And, of course, you're turning every single head on the busy roads that we're driving with lots of danger to try to get there. And almost everybody else in the parish, sure, is driving 30 plus minutes because they want to live somewhere where they can have a little bit more land, some acres. So, I mean, we got to also, I think, have a little bit of common sense to recognize that it's usually where we are right now. It's kind of an either or. Like you're either going to be really close to a Latin Mass parish or a really good parish that's usually deep in the heart of, there are some good parishes there in Brooklyn and Manhattan. Who can afford to live there or raise a family there? Almost no one. You got a few there, in Kentucky where you got kind of the great life there, but it's few and far between. So there's just the difficulties there, and you got to weigh them and see which one you're more cut out for your state and life. I mean, because maybe the dad is still working somewhere in the city, and so maybe you can live in the city and not have a lot of acreage, but at least dad can bike to work. So yeah, there's all kinds of questions, and even trying to move closer to a parish is not always as simple as it might seem at first glance. So it's one of those prudential decisions where you just have to weigh the things. But I mean, as I think everyone on here is suggesting, probably the best thing eventually is going to be to find a more remote parish and try to move as close to it as possible so that it doesn't take as much gas to get there, or if you're lucky like us, you can bike there. And then just build from the ground up or start building that way. But I don't think we ever want to forget too that basically all the good Catholic philosophers mentioned that we are made for civil society. That is, we're made for a politeia, which is like a good sized city in the Aristotelian conception of things. So we're not meant to even simply just be a village. They say it takes a village, that kind of Democrat phrase. For Aristotle and really for that Thomistic tradition that follows him, it actually takes a little bit more than a village in the civil sphere to build up the sort of society that can provide our families, because we're a lot of us are raising families here, that can provide us with all that we need to flourish in the human sense. And obviously that's what we want to aim at. Our priority is for the spiritual, but our state and life, obliges us to also seek out that human flourishing, which again is taken care of by a politeia, which is more like either a kind of decently sized city, or maybe the way in the U.S. it used to be with a county. A county. There are a lot of counties here in the Southeast that do a pretty good job of taking care of everyone in the county. So that's just some considerations, maybe haphazardly put. But there you go.
So Fawaz, you moved out. You picked your place in Kentucky, and you've made you've made mention that you have a mass close to you. You have a parish close to you, but the one you choose to go to is a little farther out. How are you starting to weigh options? And you're like, I don't care. I'll just go broke getting to that mass or back. Or how are you approaching it with everything that's starting to come into fruition? We've been talking about it for a while. Now it's actually starting to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'd have to do. My family reacts better. I see, since I've been going to the TLM. Sorry, roosters are going crazy.
Love it.
The TLM has brought more virtue in my family, more sense of peace. So my children behave better after going there. To my family, there's more graces there. So I'm going to continue going until I can't go anymore. But if I take a look back to the broader picture, if you don't mind me saying really quickly, people used to say where the Catholic Church went, so goes the world. And now they're saying well, the world is the church is following the world. Well, if you look at it closely, that's not true, because if you look at in the 40s and 50s when they infiltrated all of these gay seminarians, and we got the pedophile issue, that happened in the church before it happened in the world. So what's happening in the world right now is actually a result of what happened in the church in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So the virtual lying that we see from politicians, that happened in the church first. What we're seeing now with where the world's headed is actually what we're seeing happen in the church from the 60s and 70s. So the Catholic Church is not following the world is actually following the current state of the church. And you used to see where bishops had a lot more power. They had a lot more authority in their duties because the church actually does believe in the principle of subsidiarity. Well, Pope Francis, with the motu proprio, took away some rights from the bishops to actually start new Latin masses, took that away from them, and now he's taking more power away from the bishops. And you're seeing the world more shift that way, away from, like Stephen says, localized way of operating, now to more global. So in order to solve all these problems, the church has to shift back to holiness and whatnot, and not so much to just social justice and all that's all they're doing. And I think the world then will reflect that and change course. So you can't solve church problems by picking politicians and voting every 4 years. If you want to solve the world, you have to start with the church. Now, luckily, there are some young priests that are coming out of this who are holy. So you might see a very painful transition. But eventually, I think we'll see the church kind of renew and go back to its roots and to producing more saints, real saints. So what I'm trying to get at here is the answer to all of this, in my personal opinion, is personal holiness within families, and getting these young priests to have some fortitude and are willing to die for the faith and are willing to die for the holiness of the faith. And that's when you start seeing things to turn around. But the transition is going to be very, very painful. We might see, I think, maybe years and years of pain before then.
Yeah, absolutely. Only through pain does growth really take place. So that is our first topic, our political topic of the day, the talk of the recession. I know Steve wants to get into one more thing before we move on.
Yeah, for Waz made me think about it. I remembered it until we brought it up. Garanger just a couple days ago writes about it. I can't remember if it was on the Saint write-up or the Corpus Christi write-up leading up to Corpus Christi, where he says you don't need a Valence, you don't need a he was listing all the tyrants. If the salt of the earth loses its flavor, the society is going to crumble. Because he's bringing up all these problems that happened during the Eucharist, why the Eucharist was coming, there was need for a feast, and he brings up all these bad guys, and then at the end he goes, "It was for us. If the salt of the earth isn't doing it, we don't need tyrants."
Yeah, that's very true. The worst Catholic is a lukewarm Catholic at that point. That's the biggest threat to the church in that regard. So we will move on from our political topic. Let's do a cultural topic real quick. I hope you don't have any trust in big corporations that you think conservatives had, NASCAR, the NFL, the military, whatever. Well, you can add another one to that list. And ladies and gentlemen, I give to you the latest victory in the LGBT MAP mafia's attempt to sodomize the world is Cracker Barrel. That's right. Cracker Barrel has officially joined the ranks of those who are begging for that precious, precious GQuac money. What is GQuac? Gay couple, no kids, which is a result of capitalism, by the way. Capitalism promotes the LGBT MAP mafia because they don't have kids, and they get promoted through corporations. Those corporations then get funneled with that money back into them because they're not being paid by anybody else. But this idea that any of these major corporations, I mean, outside of maybe Hobby Lobby, like Chick-fil-A, not on your side. They waved the white flag a couple years ago. Like I said, the NFL, NASCAR, any of the U.S. military, all these places that conservatives thought like we have this in the cult. You don't have anything in the corporate secular culture. because they will eventually get in one or two interns from B school when they get their MBAs and they were taught diversity, equity, inclusion is the way to go. And then they're going to bully the board members into following this. So the idea is, first of all, I don't eat at Cracker Barrel. So this was not a huge loss for me. I know some people were absolutely devastated by this. But your reactions to the loss of supposedly conservative Cracker Barrel. And I'll also ask if any of you guys ate there at any point or were fans of it. And B, shouldn't this be a tell to conservatives, for Catholics? Just let them have the secular culture. There's no use in fighting for it because they have the boardrooms, they have the societal secular mandate. We're in the middle of it right now, in the middle of the LGBT MAP, Pride. I hate doing air quotes, so that's why I really said Pride Month. The fact is, it's also, we put too much trust in these institutions, and instead of putting it in the Catholic Church, to kind of go off of what Fawaz and Steve were saying, when we're putting our trust in the military or NASCAR or the NFL, oh, we love them so much. And then we were personally hurt, instead of being like, hey, whatever, I just won't spend my money there. Instead of going there on Sundays after mass, I'll just take my kids and we'll go home and we'll make food. Or maybe your parish, we'll have breakfast tacos after mass or something like that. So Steve, the reaction to Cracker Barrel going gay, and thoughts on anything else I was saying just now.
Color me shocked, I tell you.
Which color? Red, orange, green, yellow, blue?
Wow, it was gray. It's not even the updated color scheme.
Yeah, they forgot the Ukrainian colors.
You're gonna be up to date woke. Color me shocked. Everything's that way. Buzz Lightyear is gay now, or whatever. They got a cartoon that has some gay things in there. Chris Evans is out there telling anybody that doesn't like it's an idiot. You got to divorce yourself from all these things like Disney. Disney, football. I'm a big NFL fan. I haven't watched a game in 2 years though. And then the more they do it, it's just pushing it in you. Now we got a tranny cheerleader in Carolina. What? Why? They got football players out there pushing it. They got baseball players pushing it. They got, who was it the other day I saw? It was the Boston Red Sox. They didn't even show a baseball, but they had drag queens all over the place. What in the wide world of sports going? We have just gotten destroyed in the culture war. It's over. Throw up the white flag if you want. That thing is gone. Still worth fighting for. Still worth fighting, because we're Catholics, got to be up in the world, but not of it. But we got to fight it. It's going to get worse. They're going to eat each other. When I first came back before I came back in the faith, really, I was politics brought me in, and I remember telling a guy back in Colombia, I said, man, this was back in 2000. This is look like a lot of this leading up to a lot of French Revolution-ish style stuff going on. Look at it now. Just everything that's going on. The violence that is coming from all this libido dominandi. Michael Jones writes about it, great in that book, especially his part about the Marquis de Sade. Watch it; it's going to get worse and worse, but on a global level. You're already seeing it, how some of these guys are mad at each other. They're going to eat themselves in a sense, not literally.
Yeah.
Well, the Chinese going to hate the gays. These guys are going to hate this. These guys are going to go after this. And we're going to be in the back. We're going to take a brunt of this. But what are we doing about it? As Fawaz and Jonathan brings up all the time, you got to get grounded in the faith big time. Did you go to Corpus Christi Mass today? Is it too hard to do it today? Did you fast yesterday? I was reading this stuff going, I never heard of fasting for Corpus Christi. I didn't know there was that. I knew it was a big deal, but reading it going, man, this is even bigger deal than what I was told to in the sermons I put together before. Hey, how much do we love what's going on? Love the faith in the sense of love being hateful of everything else and wanting to help fix everything. But then it gets into decentralized thinking. All right, forget about Cracker Barrel. Can you cook your own chicken? Can you get your local butcher and make your own country fried steak? Or make your own, you get your eggs in the back like Fawaz.
Are we all going to Fawaz
and make your own eggs and sausage?
That chicken?
I'm sorry?
Are we all going to Fawaz so we can kill that chicken?
Yeah, that rooster is getting a lot of pub, by the way, last 2 weeks. But you know what I mean? We don't have to go to these places for them to feed us. We're going to have to learn how to feed ourselves in the not so distant future. You're not going to be able to go to Cracker Barrel in about 10 years because you're not going to have your social credit score up to be able to pay for it, one. And two, you might not be able to ride or doubt you'll be able to bike to it, but drive to it. So you got to get these things out of your mind. Go ahead and start divorce and figuring out a different way of, figuring out how to cook things. Where should you cook things? Again, what Jonathan brought was perfectly correct about getting a community in this. I think the founders talked about using Aristotle about 3,500 was the limit for a city before it got too big, or a republic before it got too big. New York City. New
York City.
So you got to have, again, the parish has got to be the center of your life. But then you got to have a team. All right, somebody can get together and have chickens. Somebody has a cow. Somebody can grow this. Somebody can do this. Everyone's got their traits. Everyone's got their trades to be able to do X, Y, Z. You can live together in a commune with that in a city. Yes, you don't have to go in the woods. This is not run for the hills. What is it? The Benedict option idea. It's stay in the fight and try to convert the area. As Don Livingston says, we got to break away, but then we got to convert it. And he's an Orthodox guy. So where's our boy saying this?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. John, your reaction to the latest supposed conservative corporation that people kind of took shelter in, turning their back on their customers to try and appease a group of people that hate them.
Well, I won't say that I never enjoyed a meal at Cracker Barrel because I'd be lying, but there's kind of a sense in which as you go after capitalism, Rick, I think you're onto something there. Like Chesterton said, if the goal were actually to give us more capitalists, that is, more people with the capital to create and do something that was not dictated from above, from some giant corporation whose heads they'll never see or meet, then we could talk about that sort of capitalism. But obviously, that's not what our current government wants, and that's very, very rarely what has been pursued by the powers that be in the U.S. or worldwide. So it kind of we can quibble about terms, but yeah, that's the problem with our current pursuit of so-called capitalism. And actually, I've always thought, even though again I don't mind the food, I've always thought that Cracker Barrel is actually one of the worst offenders in this regard. You think about the little knickknacks they sell. They're all the sorts of things that, like if you have a pretty talented 9 or 10-year-old, he or she could make, and make a few bucks by selling that sort of stuff on a street corner. Used to be able to do that even. But the probably the quality of it at Cracker Barrel is not going to be even as good as you'd get at the local convenience store. A local family might be able to have one of their kids make for you. So it's always been a bad offender in that regard of selling you from God knows where they got it, probably from China. But in any case, not from anywhere you would recognize, not from anyone whom you'd know or be happy to support. So it's kind of, I hate to say it, but it's a long time coming for them because of just their whole business model. I mean, I'm sure they've made tons of money, and it probably a good idea the way they did it. It was smart on the business end, but I'm sure it put lots of little folks who would have created some stuff that would have been enjoyed by someone and probably of a higher quality, put them out of business or didn't allow them to ever get started. So yeah. Like with Steve, color me shocked.
Yeah. So, Fwaz, your reaction to Cracker Barrel? You're a huge fan. Were you crushed by their turning their back?
Oh, I'm with Jonathan. I enjoyed Cracker Barrel. It's a good place to go. You see, I'm in Kentucky. We have a Cracker Barrel about 2 minutes away from here. There's a Cracker Barrel, and the Cracker Barrels in Kentucky is like the Starbucks in California. So it's one on every corner. What's going to suck is see, they put their employees in red states, and see what's going to happen is there's going to be a pushback from those who don't want to eat there anymore. Who's going to suffer? The employees who are making their minimum wage and trying to make a living. Corporations don't care. And forgive me for going a little Alex Jones here, and I can't prove this. This is just a theory of mine. Does not reflect anybody else's theory. But what did we see? I read a headline that Ukraine is running out of ammo. Gee, why would you be running out of ammo when we just sent you $40 billion of aid and weapons? Maybe because that money that we sent to Ukraine got funneled back into these corporations who lost a lot of money because of their woke. So they continue to push this, knowing that money will be funneled right back to the corporations. See, the HGTV community, what they're doing is they continue to play their game in the off season. June is when we know if they made headway or not. When more corporations come out in June, we know during the off season, they're making more headway. They're putting more activists in boards and board members, and they're complying. So they know for a fact that they're going to get pushed back. They're going to lose money. So money's got to be coming from somewhere. Somebody keeps funneling money into these corporations to continue to do this, because you're not going to have a corporation if you don't have the customers. And we see this with movies. When movies go woke, they don't do well in the box office. When they don't go woke, which goes to show you the majority of the country don't like the woke agenda, but they keep pushing it down our throats because some way, somehow, money keeps getting funneled right back to these corporations, even if they're losing it. Cracker Barrel is just one of those. Again, this is my theory. I can't prove it, but to me, I'm putting two and two together. So, I agree with all of you. Local, y'all can come in. I got two roosters, so one of them can go. So, we got our eggs, we got our meat. We're preparing. But it's not, it's going to come to a point where it's going to be very, very, very painful. I feel bad for those who are in the city because they're going to hit the most. If you can get out of the city now, do it. You can sell your house. You might have decent equity. The problem with the housing market right now is the interest rates are so high, the inventory is so low, so the house market is not reflecting. Houses not going down as much as the interest rates are going up for you to make it more affordable. So we're going to end up at stagnation for the next 10 years. And again, this is what they want, and this is what they're getting. It is a good priest once told me, like the angels, you want to have mercy for these people, in charity, of course, but a lot of us are looking forward to the judgment because there's judgment coming for these folks.
Yeah, absolutely. In that regard, they are running out of bullets, which A means they can't aim with nothing. And B, which I can't talk because I can't either. But you're right, because there's the company BlackRock. BlackRock is and I know that gets into the ouch. Oh man, BlackRock. But BlackRock has been the pioneer of ESGs, environmental, social, and credit scores, and governmental scores. And what they do is they direct the ludicrous amount of money they have to companies to shore up woke disasters and to shore up these corporations by buying their stocks when they drop, because that's where they have all their money. They've been doing this since the financial crisis in 2008. But we have Chris Evans. Speaking of woke companies, I sent Steve the Chris Evans clip. And if you were thinking about sending your kid to Lightyear this weekend, A, don't. And B, this is what Chris Evans thinks of you if you're, Catholic, any kind of decent person.
Un momento. Where would I put it?
Dude, come on. I set you up perfectly.
Do something about representation or diversity or whatever there's always pushback. How would you counter that, I suppose?
Well, the real truth is those people are idiots. I think throughout history, you can see every time there's been social advancement as we wake up. The American story, the human story is
former Catholic,
constant social awakening
from Massachusetts.
That's what makes us good. And when that happens, there's always going to be people who are afraid and unaware and trying to hold on to what was before. But those people die off like dinosaurs. And so, I think the goal is to pay them no mind, march forward, and embrace the growth that makes us human.
Yeah, nothing about the LGBT movement, MAP movement, is growth. The only people that are growing are traditional Catholic families. So that guy, but that's how they think of you. They think you're a dinosaur. They think you're going to die off. And when Lightyear will do well this weekend, because most of these movies are front loaded. There will be the people that show up. Watch for the audience score. Watch for most reviews. It'll absolutely tank in the following weekend. But like Foz was saying, they don't care because it's Disney. They already have their ESG money coming in for putting out the black LGBT subplot to push the message. And this is kind of what I was talking about with the Daily Wire last week. And I don't mean to bring that subject up, but the Daily Wire released their Terror on the Prairie movie, and everybody's freaking out about how great of a film it is behind a paywall. Disney's like, we'll lose $200 million on Lightyear. But you know what? If we sway 100 kids to embrace that lifestyle, it's worth every single penny for them. For them, money is no object. And for us Catholics and Christians or conservatives who are trying to influence the culture, it seems like our cultural warriors, like people at the Daily Wire, are more concerned about making a profit. And you can see that's why Steve is saying we're getting our butt kicked in a lot of these things, because they're like, oh, 100 million. I had somebody who I knew somebody who worked at Nike. And if you ever looked at the losses Nike takes in a quarter, it would make your head spin. But they make enough money from China, and they're all in on the agenda, so they don't care. They absolutely don't care as long as they get to influence the message.
Same with the NBA, yeah.
Yeah, NBA too. They'll get funded back. Same thing with all of these people. So it is a laundry scheme, and Ukraine is the laundry, like the laundry shop of the entire world right now, because they're just putting money in, and money is coming out to going to whoever and wherever it needs to be. In that regard, so that's our cultural commentary there.
Did Whitlock say something like that?
Who?
Yes, because they don't care about values versus votes. That's my theme for today. And I say that because the Daily Wire is a political news organization that's a conservative political news organization. And
I think you muted yourself, buddy.
Or change in the American culture.
Yes, Whitlock had an entire show on this. To be fair, I beat him by like 2 weeks. To be fair, I made that statement 2 weeks before he had this show. But yeah, he had he ranted on for an hour and 15 minutes about how the Daily Wire it got tricked that Top Gun Maverick was more of a disruptive movie than this Terror on the Prairie movie. And I'm 100% in with him on that. And I said it first. But we'll move on to our Catholic portion of the program here, where we are talking about the fact that Roe, the Dobbs decision, SCOTUS, did not come down Monday, did not come down Wednesday. So now we're kind of in the wind. And if you ask somebody like me, as soon as the leak came out, I had a professor from Ave Maria University come on, and he said they need to drop this case now. They need to drop the decision and let it be law. I've been screaming for a month that this thing needed to be dropped as soon as the leak was in. Publish it, put it into a law, call it a day, because I think I've made this reference here in the show before. I was a football coach. I was a soccer coach. The 50-50 ball, when the ball's in the air, too many bad things can happen. And right now, because the SCOTUS decision has not been dropped, it's a 50-50 ball. And the longer it stays, the longer it's held up, the more I feel people are convinced Roe's going away. The longer this sucker is in the air, the more I'm convinced it's not. And the reason I say that is because we have this map here that shows the amount of pro-life clinics that have been attacked since the leak came out. And if you can't really see it, it's 22 different ones, ranging from Hollywood, Florida to Linwood, Washington, have been firebombed, they've been vandalized, they've been attacked. And don't look to Merrick Garland. Don't look to your attorney, the attorney general here in these United States of Amazon. They've signed off on it. They're okay with it. This is all absolutely planned, because they have threatened violence. They have threatened riots as soon as Roe goes down. And too many of us have already we saw the opinion. It's going down. We just got to wait for them to do it. Hold up. I am not convinced in any way, shape, or form that this is a done deal. And I think too many of us are relying on the fact that we saw the opinion and it's already done. But the left is in mob rule. They tried to kill Kavanaugh. Now they're intimidating as many. We've talked about it before in the show. They're doing as much intimidation as possible, and we're just kind of taking the win, Steve, even though it's not done yet.
Yeah, personally, I think it's going to be gone, and I'm just expecting all the violence to come over it Here's a Nancy for
I'm
you.
a very Catholic person, and I believe in every woman's right to make her own decisions. Any other questions on another subject? Because
Any questions?
Yeah.
No,
Thanks.
I think it's a done deal, but it's just like you say, it's just being strung out. They were supposed to be done into May. They pushed back. Supposed to be done this weekend. I think was Judge Knapp called them a bunch of cowards. I think they might be scared to do it, but I think they're going to do it. Yeah, is it time to pop champagne and things like that? No, I think it's just good when they do it. It's going to be massive violence coming.
Yeah, there are reports now that it won't happen this Monday because Juneteenth, federal holiday, everybody's off. Right? They ain't going to do it this Monday. A lot of rumblings that's going to happen the 4th of July Friday. The Friday before 4th of July, it's a long weekend. It's going to be a Friday news dump. You can kind of prep the riots for the weekend instead of the midweek, I guess, when nobody's in cities and things like that. But Fawaz, the idea that we're taking this win, I think we're taking the win too soon. Steve disagrees with me. Obviously, he's wrong in that regard. No, he's right, because there's a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me that said this is a done deal. But I just don't like the fact that the Roberts Court is holding this thing so close to the vest. And it every day it passes, it shows that mob rule can really influence, sitting justices.
Yeah, it's one of those, we'll have to wait and see type thing. I used to sell. I used to be a salesman back in California. I used to sell HVAC equipment and into homes and go in, and I used to, when I first started, I was ignorant. I used to think when I closed the deal, it was closed, and then when you give the homeowner enough time to sit there and think about it, it's a big investment. A lot, when you can't install it for another week, they usually change their mind. And that's how life is. So that, they could be delaying it, either preparing for the riots or whatever it might not be. But like you said, it should have been closed. It should have, once the leak came out, you should have closed it and then dealt with the repercussions like we did with the BLM riots. It's unfortunate because this is how life is. Life is famine, life is feast. Sometimes you have famine, sometimes you have feast. I would say to everybody, despondence is never the answer. I like Stephen's mentality when it comes to this, even though he's deep into what he talks about with Clown Planet and all of these things that he does. He still has hope and joy, where it could have driven a normie to a deep end. And like, we're talking about Chris Evans is history. So look at history. These people would die like dinosaurs. And excuse me, if you look at history,
I am not normal.
If you look at history, what do we see? We see folks who are trying to be progressive. We change society, it collapses, and then who rebuilds? Traditional families. If we look at history, that's what happens. And this is just another famine where we're going to see a collapse in society, and we're going to rebuild. So instead of trying to fight, I mean, I guess you could fight. I know Steve Bannon came out the other day talking about how we're going to win 100 seats and we're going to rule for the next 100 years because there's going to be a great cultural shift. And it's like, maybe that's coming, but it's going to be a lot more painful than you say it is. It's not going to be a midterms election. It's going to change everyone's minds. Give me a break. So with Roe, it needed to get done immediately. In my terms, what I used to do, we should have put the unit in the day that we sold it, instead of giving the person some time to think about it, because then they're going to change their minds. Yeah, I don't know. My advice would be, and this is advice that was given to me, is if you're trying to set up heaven on earth for your future children, instead of doing that, why don't you set them up to carry the cross, because life is feast and life is famine. During the feast, they can feast. During the famine, they know how to handle it. They know how to pick up their cross. They can continue moving forward as strong individuals. You mentioned the Daily Wire. The Daily Wires, like we talked about. Now, when I was saying the Daily Wire is, their audience are easier to convert than the left. So we should go after their audience to get them to be more traditional rather than just conservatives, which we know is just liberals 10 years ago or 15 years ago. How do I know this? What is this movie about? Some lady kicking everyone's behind? I mean, that's not traditional. That's not masculine. It used to be the John Waynes of the world were the ones who were kicking the lawless folks behind. And as far as the people who want to go and riot and burn down these things, we're talking about civilized folks who are progressive. Really, we're talking about children who have the emotional capacity of 5-year-olds who don't get their way, so they start causing havoc and creating a meltdown. That's exactly what we're seeing right now. And us adults are sitting there thinking, really, that's how you're going to act? Way to be immature, but that's not going to change their mind. They don't care. They want what they want, and they're going to push through violence because those who don't know how to rationalize, they have no virtue, know nothing but violence. So this is where we're at right now. My advice is to teach your children to be virtuous so they can carry their cross during the famine and rejoice during the feast. You're muted, bud.
Of course I'm muted. I'm supposed to trying to do too many things at once here. But yeah, the idea here that we're going to be trying to convince the left that they're going to somehow do better than we are. No, that's not going to work. And as far as all this stuff goes, I wanted it done, but if there's nothing we can do in that regard. So I guess pray, hope, and don't worry. And whatever is going to happen in that going forward. But that's really all we have there. John had to run because he had to take care of a friend. So keep John's friend in your prayers. So I guess for right now, we'll start wrapping this sucker up. So I will go first because I never get to go first to do the Saint of the Week in the crime room. I think for my cry room, I'm going with the low hanging fruit. I'm going with Chris Evans. I'm going with Chris Evans for the cry room. He's my guy. So I will take that in that regard. And as far as my Saint of the Week, I never plan ahead on these things. But I actually am going to go with Ted Cruz because Ted Cruz, and I know I've been tough on Ted Cruz before in the past, but the idea that I like having Ted Cruz is because he actually did show some pretty good questions to the head of the FBI about who was there on January 6th and why they were able to not identify the fact that there were FBI Fed boys in the actual crowd at the Capitol. So he's going to be my Saint of the Week, and my cry room is going to be Chris Evans in that regard. So Fawaz, I'll throw it to you since it's only you and I now. Who do you have for Saint of the Week, and who do you have for the cry room?
Sure. My Saint of the Week is actually going to be Rand Paul. He gets his flack, but being from Kentucky, he's one of the only people I can trust in Kentucky. Him and Thomas Massey, I like them both. So Rand Paul questioning Fauci once again on boosting children for absolutely zero reason, and pushing him on how much royalties he received from these what are they, the vaccine corporations. So he continues to push the elites, which is great. And then I know my choir room. I know this guy's. They all said we can't pick him, but I think it's renewed. He's back in the limelight. I'm going to pick Fauci again, and the reason I'm going to pick Fauci is because his whole thing about vaccine this and vaccine that. He just got COVID, and he's sitting there crying about children should be receiving all of these because we have the data to back it up, even though that they don't have the data to back it up. The Israel data and data from even the CDC shows that children who get COVID have almost a zero cause for concern. So boosting a child could cause more harm from the vaccine than they could ever get from COVID. So that's going to be my two folks.
Excellent. All right, Steve, Saint of the Week and cry room.
Fawaz is trying to get the show canceled.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in the cry room whoever is rebranding the monkey. Apparently monkeypox is getting rebranded because it's offensive to monkeys or Africans. I don't know what it is. Apparently it's racist, I think. I don't know. I'm upset about that. They're making it MXPR or whatever. So the cry room is going to the monkeypox rebranders. And saint of the week, I'll go with I know it was supposed to be somebody for the culture now. I'll go with somebody, the Saint, was it Syracuse and Jolita. Two saints, their feasts are today. It's not going to be happening for Corpus Christi. Obviously, trumps it. Read of those two guys. Those two is a mother and kid, 3-year-old kid, and a mother. And as Garange writes, this is a great write-up for a great history lesson for mothers and being in control of the education. Because she was worried that the persecutions were going to take the kid away and then train him to be a pagan. So you can think about that today. How many mothers would send their kids into a pagan school voluntarily and train them to be pagan instead of keeping them together and raising them the right way? And again, it goes culture. It goes against everything that we're raised in, as we've been talking about for the last hour.
All right. That's it for, we have our saints of the saint of the day in our cry rooms. That's going to be it for this week's News from the Pew. I want to thank John, Fwaz, and Steve for hanging out with me. I'm your host, Rick Barrett. We'll see you next week. Like, subscribe, and share. And Viva Cristo Rey.
Important is bodily autonomy, the same right men have always had. We just want equal rights. The right to govern our own bodies, just like men have always had. It's that simple.
Do you support the right for people to not get the COVID vaccine?
It's irrelevant.
Right? My body, my choice.
You're right. It's not irrelevant.
Yeah, but one saves lives.
You're right. It's
One's
not
a
irrelevant.
choice.
One of them is going to be in a pandemic state, right? A state of emergency, which we all know laws change during a state of emergency.
Do you agree with the statement or the principle of my body, my choice?
Yes, absolutely. Bodily autonomy is a human right. Healthcare is a human right. Access to healthcare should not be something that is dictated by the Supreme Court.
During the pandemic, did you support people's right to not get the COVID vaccine?
It's a difficult conversation.
Do you support bodily autonomy in other situations? For example, the COVID vaccine mandates.
The vaccine mandates, we've been mandated to get vaccines for years and years and years.
So you do support in that situation people not having control of their bodies?
That's not having not control of your bodies. Like, I don't understand.
Do you think it is important for people to have medical and health control over their own body?
Yeah, it's good for them. It's good for everybody.
You didn't support the mandates?
I do support the mandates, yeah.
Isn't that mandate that people have to get the vaccine so they don't have control over their own body?
Vaccinations are good for people.
But in that case, you don't have control, right? If there's a mandate?
No, they don't have to get it. They just
can't go anywhere or do anything, right?
They just can't have a job. You don't have a right to a job.
Everybody should have a right to do what they want with their bodies.
Do you support the people's right to choose not to get the COVID vaccine?
I'm not